To introduce myself, I'm John Laker. I'm one of the directors of Marlow Energy Group, and I will be your MC today. Welcome everybody who is here. Please can I therefore introduce Kevin Slack. As you can see on the slide in front of you, he's a director of Green Space Architects, but he's going to tell you more about that in a minute. Over to you, Kevin.
Yeah, so could we put the slides up, please, Michaela? Good evening, everybody. So, yeah, my name is Kevin Slack, a director of Green Space Architects. We have a base in, next slide, please. And I'm going to talk to you about where you go to from where your home is to where we can get it to. Personally, I have a wide range of experience across all sorts of sectors, but since I started my own business in 2010, we've focused on houses and housing, terribly important, particularly the retrofit side, to bring the existing 25 million houses, not all us on our own, of course, up to a high energy and low carbon standard. We do say we're underpinned by sustainable design principles, because I've been to many projects where they've got a fantastic ventilation strategy and a fantastic passive solar gain, but you can't see out the windows because they face north, or you can't read by daylight because there's can't be too much glass in that room. So we like to get a balance between performance and architectural sensibilities of, in the end, I think. Next slide, please. Achieving, sorry, Michaela, that's next slide. That we want you to all live in beautiful homes. That's your version of beautiful, you know. So that's what people will look after and truly love their homes. And what your version of beautiful is. But it's got to be warm. It's got to be affordable to run. It's got to be low maintenance, and it's also got to work in terms of its layout and things. But in the end, we aim at trying to make them beautiful. Next, please. Now, we do this both on new build, where it's a bit easier, and existing buildings, where what we call a fabric first. So what we're trying to do is give your home a big warm jacket, if you like. So the roof, walls and ground floor are as well insulated, but also airtight as possible, so there are no drafts and infiltration in it. So and when you then when we have we also have to get rid of cold bridges, so that's where like, say, a piece of concrete goes from outside to inside, it creates a cold surface on the inside, so we're trying to deal with that. And then when we've got this big jacket, you have to ventilate. Anyone who's gone out and got hot in an exceedingly warm coat, it just gets a bit damp inside, and the same happens to your buildings. So ventilation is something we do terribly badly here, and even with a well insulated house, if you're not ventilating properly, and we have a preference for mechanical ventilation with heat recovery, it's still going to create mold and bad air. So there are various standards we can see here, which we can apply both to new build and existing buildings, and we have this idea of moderating the climate. So if you're in a very hot climate, you keep it cool. If you're in a very cold climate, you keep it warm. And it's really coming down to what we call a new normal. As soon as you move away from brick and block cavity walls, gas-fired radiator systems and truss rafter roofs, there are about 1,000 permutations, but there are some fundamentals we can get to. So U values, if that's the amount of heat that can travel through a wall or a window or a roof, down to this value of 0.1. The numbers may not mean very much to some of you, but basically this is the sort of target we have, again, both for new build and existing. making high performance windows. So double glazing is okay. We still fit double glazing quite a bit, but sometimes we're moving to triple glazing these days, but also fitting it so that the edges of the windows are also airtight around there, that there aren't gaps, and we manage where the heat comes in and out with ventilation, say minimizing the cold bridging. And then we meet the remaining demand with energy efficient sources. So we've all heard about heat pumps. We do get, and I'll show you shortly, to a point with particularly new build where we don't actually need a space heating system. It's just your body heat, cooking, bathing, switching the computer on, a bit of solar gain from the sun when it shines, is enough to keep the space warm. People still don't believe us and still put a heating system in, but there's got one chap, which again I'll show you, which is he's been through 3 winters now and not actually turned his heating on. You don't have to be on a low income or fixed income for that to be attractive. Next, please. So with new build, it is a bit easy. You can use these on extensions as well, but it basically falls, if you are thinking about a new home, this goes a little bit, well, quite a long way beyond the building regs, but there are basically 2 choices: timber-based systems or concrete-based systems. The timber systems include what are called SIPS panels, which are structural insulated panels, which are 2 sheets of board with insulation between. The passive frame is taking 2 bits of timber and filling the gap with, usually with cellulose fibre, which is like ripped up newspapers, if you like, a very, very low carbon, very high performance solution, or what are called closed panel timber frames. So you may have seen timber frames made out of sort of 4x2, 5x2 sections. These are actually made in a factory and come to site as whole wall panels. You get a much higher standard by building off site. On the concrete side, it's called insulated concrete formwork. So that is either, you may have seen, if you watch Grand Designs, you may have seen polystyrene blocks that they fill with concrete and sometimes they burst. So projects like Nudura or Jack-On. Then there are the mineralized wood fibre ends. So this you may have heard of Durasol, for instance, which is a bit like shredded wheat, if you like, strips of timber covered in concrete and more formed into blocks, which again you pour concrete inside, and there is a panel-based version of that. Next, please. And with those, there is no real look to eco design. If you wanted to look like a Georgian cottage, you could do that. If you wanted it to look like a farm, you could do that. If you want to look at like the grand design you wished for, it could look like that. Some people want to be demonstrably green, so people know they have an eco house, but one of the most eco houses we've got does look like a Georgian farmhouse. This is the one that has no space heating demand, although he has put this small LPG boiler in. A company called MBC, based in Gloucester, produced this twin frame, which has already got passive house standard. Now, passive house is one of the standards, again, you may have heard of. There is a retrofit version called Enerfit, and this really takes everything, airtightness and insulation, to as far as you need to in order to have that warm jacket. And the idea of the warm jacket actually keeps the heat out in the summer as well as keeping the cold out, or keeping the heat in the winter. Works both ways. And this one, even in the top centre with the pink there, it actually has a polystyrene ground floor slab as well, which means there's no the pink part is, or purple is, higher density polystyrene, which means there's no cold bridge to the ground even, and then a minimum amount of concrete. The hatched area in the centre is a small amount of concrete as you get. Concrete, unfortunately, is still the only thing that really does what it does. You might hear of hempcrete and other concrete substitutes, but they're still a little way off being mainstream yet, while they are trying to decarbonise it. So with new build, relatively easy. Next, please, Michaela. this is an ICF house, again, completely different shape, completely different look. This is made up of mineralized wood fiber panels, but it's got a huge integrated solar array, big battery, and an air source heat pump. And it could look like what. So part of it looks, it's got timber frame in it, got brickwork and slated roofs. The rest has got a sort of a standing seam metal, which is reflective of there's a barn across the river, the other side, that it's kind of inspired by, and the materials kind of update that. But as you can see, the EPC, as-built EPC, when it was completed a few months ago, has actually gone beyond. I mean, EPCs go from 0 to 100. Anything above that means you're a net exporter of energy. So not only are they energy efficient, they're actually positive contributions back to the grid, meaning it creates more energy. So again, new build, relatively easy if you're not doing it. It's not rocket science. This is the thing. So next, please. This is just sectioned through the level of detail you have to, and you've got to have effectively an airtightness champion, because airtightness is about as important as insulation, that you stop the draft, you stop the leakage in and out. And we actually, you can't quite see it on here, but there's a line that runs all the way around the outside, around to the windows and everything. And somebody on site has to make sure that is maintained. So you've got this breathable. Usually, it's not like living in a plastic bag that moisture can pass through it, so the walls breathe. But you then have to meet that with a mechanical ventilation system, which recovers the heat before it leaves the building. Next, please. But most of you probably have something else. So you might have on the left there a Victorian house, something perhaps from the 60s or 70s, a more modern house, or something very odd that could be a listed building, or something that doesn't really fit into those sort of broad categories, and all clear. And what we find is people literally, they just don't know where to start. So if we go next, please. So here, this is a 1956 bungalow, actually backs onto Highgate Cemetery. One of the Monty Python cast lived next door. Very interesting. And they've done in fact, the lady's father designed it, and she grew up there. And we've done effectively the basic thing. So we're trying to get that warm jacket over it. So at a basic level, we've got really good windows, beautifully fitted and airtight. When it was first done, they were still getting drafts, and we had a thermal imaging company come in who also look at airtightness as well, and they did us a report. We could see exactly where the problems were, and they basically hadn't sealed underneath those full height windows. Made a huge difference to it. But then we've just put ordinary cavity wall insulation in, and on the right there, that's 350 mil, which is what, 14 inches of insulation in 3 layers that goes across between the joists and across the walls, trying to cover up the air paths. And there they actually just put a little walkway in. Not they intend to put stuff up there, but just put this walkway on something called loft legs, which just gives them access through the pit, mainly so they can inspect or keep an eye on the inside of the building from there. And because it became airtight, we actually installed a mechanical ventilation system, and this is typically a plan you get from them. The blue is air coming in that comes through, which actually takes the heat from the outgoing air. Don't actually mix. They have a plate heat exchanger where half are for the incoming and half for the outgoing air. And then the red is where we're extracting from the kitchen, WC and shower room, bathroom, to take the air out again. And that then makes sure you've got a good quality of air. It also works very well if you're on a main road or something and you can't ventilate to the front. And that is really a basic level, but the lady still spent getting on for £20,000, you know, just getting it to the right standard. But that means her heating bills have plummeted from where she was, and it is that equation that's really important. Next, please. So this is actually my own house, and we took it on as a complete wreck. You could see out of the roof from inside, could leave footprints in the floorboards, had a rudimentary electric, rudimentary plumbing. It's grade 2 listed. We replaced the windows where we could. They allowed us to put double glazing in. Others were weather stripped. We got a grant from British Gas at the time for the energy improvements. That's not so much there now, but we put 4 inches, 100 mil of internal wall insulation, about 12 inches in the floor and 18 inches in the attics. And we've just had the EPC done. It had an EPC of 1 when we took it over. It's actually got a low B at the moment, which is quite something for a listed building. And we've got we sized everything for a heat pump, but at the time it was cheaper to put a gas boiler, or in fact 2 gas boilers in, and with underfloor heating and a few radiators. But the mechanical ventilation, again, has made a huge difference. And we really, once you get to a certain level of air tightness, you have to do this. So even if you have got so, and that's a picture of our kitchen, which was just stripped back to brickwork, so we were allowed to put a modern kitchen back into that space. Other rooms have still got cornices and things, but what you can't see is all the pipe work and things for the mechanical ventilation. And even if you do live in a beautiful period house or just a historic lovely old house, it can still be beautiful on the outside, beautiful on the inside, with the right approach. Next, please. That again on the right, a similar thing that we've got on the mechanical ventilation system. We actually dropped the ceiling in the hallway to accommodate most of the pipe work, and then the heat exchangers were tucked away in service rooms, and we managed to insert it everywhere into the house. And we think it's the single thing that makes our house cheap to run. Under a refurbishment. Next, please. This is slightly different. Again, you might have this as a fairly standard developer house. Small rooms, one room too big, but they had already done quite a lot to it. They had already had a biomass boiler installed, but they had this terribly hot and cold conservatory on the back. Couldn't see the garden, couldn't get to the garden very well, and they had a view straight out the back of a terrace of houses to the back. And we approached them about they approached us about remodeling the ground floor, but also turning the attention away to a gap between the neighbours' buildings where they actually look down a field. And we got permission to put this is actually a SIPS structure on the back, reconfigured the staircase, and it was just this amazing space now, that half in the existing house, half out. You can see on the eaves line how we've pulled the little extension out the back, put a roof light over that, and at the same time upgraded the fabric of the existing house with internal wall insulation as well, totally transforming their use of the house and the look of it from the back. Next, please. So a simple extension can change how it works. So you see on the left how it was, and on the right how the new kitchen is moved out from a tiny little galley into this lovely big open space. And this, by taking away the back, we've actually upgraded all the back to the highest modern standards. And we did some internal wall insulation as well on the sitting room end, and reconfigured the house to work really well. Upstairs there was hardly anything, and you've got this amazing space within the back. And so that can, just by putting a super efficient thing on the back, can actually change all the nature of the end of the house as well. Next, please. This is again another 1970s, like probably late 60s house, fairly bland, very poor performance, very poor air tightness, poorly ventilated. And these people had an idea that they wanted something very modern. So we do a survey of it, and using photographs and things have done. So this is total encapsulation now of an existing house with a little bit of extension here and there, particularly on the back. So again, you can transform your house whilst upgrading the performance. So here we had external wall insulation, which we then clad with timber and render and a bit of metal to make it look like a modern and perform like a modern house. Still with a gas boiler. They replaced the existing floors with insulated floors and the ever-present mechanical ventilation. And this is to there. So again, almost anything you've got can become almost anything you want. And obviously, we're way beyond the 20,000 of the original of the first house I showed you for retrofit. Next, please. So this is the design for it, transforming the way the building worked on the inside at the same time. And then whilst you're doing that work, you've got the opportunity to upgrade all the performance of the house as well. And next. So I had a penchant for orange here for some reason, but again, it's taking that ordinary house and turning it into something they love. And not everyone will love this, but it's for them, not everyone else. And it's whatever your version of these things are can be achieved. We like to think today, on the first day, you know, whatever your budget is, you can have anything you want, and then you have to go and try and hold on to that through the whole process, which can be quite long and complex. But in this case, they're absolutely delighted with this result on what was basically just an ordinary house. And again, I don't know what the EPC was like on this one, but that view, that's actually a view over Cannock Chase in Staffordshire, and that's the view from their bedroom. And next, nearly there now. This is taking it to a complete extreme now. Instead of just an overclad, we've actually taken a 60s chalet style chalet style house in Wolverhampton with a double garage next to it. Very, very poor use of space upstairs within the roof, which starts at first floor level. And next. And totally cleared out the ground floor, wrapped the whole ground floor in insulation, absorbed the garage into the space, and then taken the roof off and put a whole first floor on there. So you actually get 4 bedrooms and ensuite and all the facilities we want. And in this case, room for 10,000 books and growing to be accommodated in effectively the 4th bedroom and the whole of the landing area. 480 linear meters of bookshelf was required, and this takes it as far as we can. And next, please. So this was before, and planning wise, we had no comments from neighbours and no comments from the planners, and it was designed to look like next. So again, their idea of beautiful. So this is, we're into hundreds of thousands now. You know, it's a complete transformation of something you have. But for people, we find that many people buy a house because they just run out of things to look at. You know, so it's almost, as I say, whatever you've got can become whatever you want. And in terms of this actually came out again with a positive EPC. By wrapping the ground floor with external wall insulation and render, and the first floor was a SIP structure to the same performance as a new house. And this is what they achieved next, please. So that's it. They reduced the size of the windows and things for privacy reasons, which I think is a bit of a disappointment, but they're absolutely over the moon with this. Again, it won't be to everyone's taste, but I say it's for you to do whatever you want with your with your property or indeed your new build, but all the time it is trying to find strategies to increase the performance through actually tried and tested methods of insulation, whether that's inside or outside, air tightness, which again stops all those drafts coming through. Ventilation, whilst you can have what's called passive stack ventilation, where you allow air in at low level and take it out at a high level, it's very difficult to recover the heat from that. So we do prefer a mechanical ventilation with heat recovery system, which more than pays for itself in terms of the energy it uses. You then have good daylight. If you live in a bungalow, a few roof lights will totally daylight the space during the daylight hours, meaning you don't have to use electric light. You use low energy light fittings. We've got in our own home, we've got 99%, I think, LEDs, which don't ever pop, run at 3 watts or something like that. Our power consumption is very, very low for a big house, and then you meet any remaining demand with low energy appliances or heating systems, which again are not rocket science, but there is a cost to a lot of these things. So I think that's the final slide, Michaela. Yeah, so that's just pop that back to the previous one, and yeah, that's take some questions if you wish.
It's much appreciated, Kevin. I'm going to try and get a view where we get everybody in, so that possibly we can see people's hands if they raise their hands. Michaela, can you stop that? That's pretty good, I think. Do we have any questions for Kevin? If I can't see your hand, unmute yourself and say who you are. Sue has got a question.
Sue, hi.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Have you done any work on retrofitting in a conservation area? I'm in a village, Cookham, which is just outside Marlow, and there are a sizable number of historical buildings, and it's trying to find people to help the villagers realize what's available in terms of glazing, secondary glazing and retrofitting. Have you had experience of?
Yeah, so a good number of things that we do are our own house in a conservation area as well. If something's already beautiful on the outside, it's very difficult to clad the outside. The ideal thing is to clad the outside with insulation, like wearing a warm overcoat in the winter, which, unlike an overcoat, does keep you cool in the summer as well by keeping the heat out. Have you ever stayed in? We stayed in the south of France in a barn conversion, and we were in the attic, and the roof was just a big radiator in the day, and you couldn't. It stops that sort of thing going on. But it is a question of degree. So there are very high performance traditional windows. We had sash windows made here, but with double glazing and very good sealing done on them to the highest performance we can do. So it is a question of degree. It doesn't mean, as I say, eco design and low energy design doesn't have a look. It can look like a beautiful leaded light cottage. It can look like whatever you want. So it is a question of how far one can go. You can do an awful lot on the inside. Many properties, and we've got one at the moment that, well, we're actually thinking of buying instead of ours. It's beautiful on the outside and terribly decorative and beautiful on the inside, cornices and picture rails and beautiful skirtings. And the thought of taking all that off and it's not listed, but taking all that off and putting it back. So we're having to think very carefully what we do in this case. There are some products like aerogel, which is the sort of insulation they use on the space station, but it's £200 to £300 a square metre. But it's the same thickness as plaster, so you can actually lose it within the wall. The house, the Victorian house I showed you earlier, the guy who owns that works for a company that produces that material, and he's actually using it on his inside front wall. But it's desperately expensive, you know. So there are. We're trying to think we're going to have to compensate with other strategies, like having very good attic insulation, very good floor insulation, and then it's controlling the moisture. So moisture is the reason you get black mold. Even if you're quite well ventilated, if you've got furniture in corners, you can get black mold behind there. It's not because there's rising damp or anything. It's just because you've got moist air, you know, just by cooking, breathing, coming in with wet shoes or wet coats or whatever. Laundry, and the air doesn't move, and the wall's relatively cold in those corners, and it just doesn't move, and you end up with, you know, you find it in fitted wardrobes and things like that. So it's a matter of that air quality, and why we like mechanical ventilation is it takes all that moisture away and recovers the heat from it. So but a system is the one in that bungalow, the bungalow in Highgate was about £4,000, you know, and that's suddenly a lot of money for people to do. But when you look at the paybacks on some of these things, Windows will never pay you back. Well, unless you live to about 150, there's about a 75-year payback on new Windows. But you don't expect your car to pay you back, for instance. You don't expect, and the increased comfort, and you do get reduced running costs. But I mean, some windows need replacing anyway. But and you can use secondary glazing systems. Some friends they've got beautiful leaded lights in their house, and I said, "Oh, I thought you were getting secondary glazing in here," and he said, "We have." And it was so beautifully done by this company, not stupid expensive, but not like those big sliding aluminium things one used to see, and then they were just terrible, terrible things, and you get condensation between the two. These beautiful things that keep things beautiful on the inside and on the outside. So the strategies are there, the products are there, and what we're trying to do is we could be really deep green and do rammed earth and round pole construction and hempcrete and things, but we're trying to find a path through for the average people in the average house, working with the average builder on the out of the local builders merchant, not importing some system from Latvia or a container from China or something. We want the everyday to become normal, because the retrofit challenge is enormous. You know, that we've all had our energy bills go up recently, and it's focused people's minds. But the government's committed to a carbon reduction. Carbon and energy don't necessarily go together. You can have a low energy system which is quite high carbon, but they've committed to this 80% reduction by 2050, which means around 20 million of the 25 million houses that exist have to be retrofitted by then. It's actually coming up to nearly 2 per minute, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week need doing, and we're doing about 10,000 a year. Not us personally. It's not. It's hundreds of thousands a year. You know, if you look at how long there is now till 2050, and really we need to do whole streets at a time. But I don't know what is going to give. Most of our clients are values-driven owners. We apply those lessons to social housing as well, and mass housing where we can, and for enlightened developers. But it is a massive task, and the funding is the biggest thing. How do you find this money? Because there is no mechanism in conveyancing to make people upgrade their homes. You couldn't buy an F-rated fridge, or hopefully wouldn't buy an F-rated fridge or an F-rated car or an F-rated washing machine. Comes to your biggest asset, your home. Oh, it doesn't matter, does it? You know, suddenly we can just buy. You know, a client again has brought me a house with an EPC of 1. Where do we go from here? You know, but you can buy it. You know, and it's like, at least cars, inefficient cars are scrapped. houses are rarely scrapped. We have about a 2% churn in buildings a year at most, and they're just all hanging around, you know. But people are never going to be in it long enough to get the benefit, and the estate agents aren't valuing them up. But we had someone bought a unimproved 70s detached house, £700,000, and they discovered they need to spend 700,000 on it to do what they want, and it isn't worth the money that they've paid for it, because it's not performing to the standard. And people will one day wake up to say, well, I want an A-rated house, please. Why would I buy even the things that are being built probably where you live will all need retrofitting?
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Can I just add something to that with regard to the payback? The thing that people don't often think about is the fact that if you improve your house significantly, it actually increases the value of the house, especially compared with the one next door, which isn't. So,
Yeah.
you know, you're actually investing in something which is probably worth more at the end of the day. Second question, please.
Bill
Anyone?
has his hand up.
Hello,
Right.
guys. You mentioned aerogel. I've come across Sempertap, which is £34 a square metre, 30% reduction in heat loss. But my DIY shop told me about wall rock. The back door to my kitchen, I've got solid walls, right? Back door to my kitchen extension, Dripwater mould, at £10 a square metre, put up by using wallpaper. It's 4 millimetres thick, wall rock, by Anaglypta, right? It's 4 millimetres thick, wallpaper paste, sorted. No more
Really?
mold. Wall rock is absolutely amazing.
Wall rock.
Wall
Can you share
rock.
that on the chat?
Yeah, I'll put information on the chat. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Right, next question. We've got time for another 2 or 3. Anyone got their hand up? I can't see anyone at the moment. Trevor Farmfield. Go on, Trevor, you're on mute at the moment.
Hi, Kevin, you can hear me all right?
Yes, can indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When we met at the Smart Energy Show, I think you mentioned something about a location. Was it in Swindon or somewhere where people could visit?
Yes, it's the National Self-Build and Renovation Centre. It's about the size of a B&Q, just off junction 16 of the M4, just north of there. It's open 7 days a week, but they have regular shows and events there. And basically, they are set up to educate people and link them to suppliers and consultants to understand self-build and renovation to a very high standard. Even if you want to project manage your own project, they can teach you how to do that as well. It's just all the W's, nsbrc.co.uk, and it is a fantastic resource to look up on both online and go there. They've got everything from exhibitions of modern methods of construction, show houses, a bit like the Ideal Home Show, lots of displays for products, many of them eco, low energy products like insulation, but all sorts of finishes, building systems, rainwater harvesting, almost everything you could wish for. In fact, I have some clients, got one in Shenley in Hertfordshire, who is getting all of his products and services from people who exhibit there. We exhibit there, and it is a fantastic resource. So nsbrc.co.uk, certainly worth looking up, even if you don't go there, but not too far from you either.
Yeah, a good reason to go to Swindon.
Indeed.
Right, do we have any more questions? Anyone wish to query Kevin? No, I think.
No.
Oh, Trevor's got another question.
Yeah, just a quick one, Kevin.
Yeah.
Cavity wall insulation got a bad name at one point in time.
Yes. So Rendered houses, not a problem, because water can't get through. The cavities existed, it's from the 30s, to prevent water penetration, not to give you an opportunity for insulation. So because solid walls were often, the rain hits them, the rain soaks through, brickwork's full of cracks. So they were introduced for water to keep the moisture out, basically, and they were ventilating. You'll see air bricks at the bottom and at the top to ventilate the cavity and get any moisture out that gets through. When you fill that up, obviously you're now creating a gap between the two. We only really advocate the polystyrene bead, which is set in a matrix, which doesn't leave any paths through it for moisture to get through. So effectively, it's, if I said it was in PVA glue, it's not quite right, but they are little polystyrene beads, which are generally made from recycled engine oil. So they're actually quite, and about 2% oil and 98% steam. They're the ones that work. But I think things like the fibre ones we don't like using, and certainly not cellulose, not in brickwork, because it can become damp and just cause you more than slump to the bottom. And that did get a poor reputation, rightly so.
And the polystyrene ones, they're blown in, are they?
They are pumped in, so they have to actually create a grid of holes. So they usually go through the cement joints between them, but at quite close centres. And they have a system that shows how it's actually flowing on the inside. We had a rendered house before, and we had it done. And you do have to have the whole house painted again afterwards, in our case, because it's full of holes. You know, it's like it's been shot at, shall we say? But it certainly works now, and that's what we've used up in Highgate.
Okay, Kevin, thank you. Did Sue have your hand up?
Yes, Kevin, I'd be very interested to know if you were able to find out from your friend which company did the secondary glazing.
Yes, I believe it was Granada, but I will find out for you. Granada, they're in West Midlands somewhere. Granada secondary glazing, like the TV company. Or the city in Spain. I know they're a very good firm, but there might have been another one whose name I can't recall at the moment. But Granada certainly do good products.
Thank you.
I think we've possibly come to the end of the questions, if that's all right with everyone. So coming to the end of the talk, can I first of all thank Michaela for helping with the slides and everything else.
Thank you, Michaela.
Obviously, more importantly, Kevin, for giving us an excellent talk, really interesting. Anyway, let's have a quick round of applause for Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Much appreciated.
You're very welcome.
Hopefully, we'll see you all at the next meeting we have in April.
Yeah, people are free to email me if they wish, because next steps are the important things for people, and they need to know where to turn. So it's finding out how to put people in touch with the right people, but certainly NSBRC is a good start. Okay, if people haven't got Kevin's email address, just email me at Marlow Energy Group and I'll pass that on to you, if that's all right. On the end of the presentation, if you look up again, so. Yeah, you'd have to look at the recording. I see, right, fair enough. Good. Okay, well, I will say adieu to everyone. Thank you, much appreciated. Thank you for having me, John. Au revoir. Au revoir.